Welcome everyone to another episode of Runners Roundtable. Season 5 is hot takes and some hot topics. And today I am joined with, never mind, forget it all. Don't, I have Dr. Asher Kyger here with me today. And we're going to talk all things recovery. And the title of the episode is Recovery is for Wimp. Just kidding, y'all. Recovery is not for wimps. Recovery is for like some of the strongest, most badass people I know. And we're going to get into all of that. But first, Asher, can you introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit of your running history, running story, however you want to approach that? It's all yours.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I specialize in strength and conditioning and injury prevention. I work with a lot of ultra runners. I work with a lot of road runners. Um, and my history with running, I guess, is long. I'll try to kind of give you a synopsis as quick as I can. I started running in middle school, high school, been running forever. My mom was an exceptional and still is an exceptional runner. So it's kind of, I joke that it's in my genes. I fought it for a long time. I was a three-sport athlete, like in college or in high school, two-sport in college, just like refusing to dive in. But definitely now it's like where I find my joy. I obviously have built a career around it too. But I went from college into the post-collegiate worlds, raced a little bit there at USATF races, mostly on the trails, some on the roads. And then as I went to physical therapy school, I had coached at some prep schools prior and went into the clinic and got really frustrated with the limitations of insurance and
Mm.
how I couldn't help runners fully um, after they got injured, right? Like they would come in, they would already be injured. It'd be an injury that they could have prevented if they had more information readily available to them. And insurance was limiting how we got back to what they wanted to do and what their joys were. And so I developed Dashner Personalized Running back in 2017 and eventually left the clinic. And that's just what I do now. I do a lot of mechanical evaluations, assessments. I work a lot with one-on-one clients. And I still run. So like I've been doing 50Ks and last year oh, you okay? You're about to sneeze. Um, bless you. Last year, traversed the Grand Canyon, so rim to rim, and just doing some adventures now. But yeah, so long history that I could detail a lot more, but it's been part of my life forever and is definitely part of my life now on every asset and every facet, I should say.
Oh my gosh, I have a sneeze attack. It's in my nose. It just wants to come out,
We
but
can pause for Claritin if you would like.
it's okay. It's okay. Maybe if I laugh, it'll just go back.
Hmm.
I have just a sidebar question.
Yeah.
Have you ever hallucinated while on your trail runs or in your
Oh,
races?
so no. And so
Okay.
I know there are people who have, and there are individuals who do. Most of the time, it's with athletes that do multi-day events, so
Okay.
sprint races and things like that. So you're talking about like 250, sometimes 100 milers, but mostly 250, 200 plus miles, where they're going out there and they're on the course for 3 to 5 plus days. But no, I have done
Okay.
50Ks. It's taken me about, 4 or 5 hours. It is not the amount of time required to get into that psychological and depleted state.
Okay. I was just curious because trail runners are so fascinating to me because
Yeah.
it seems like it's a different community and a
Mhm.
different culture around running than road racing. And I've read a few books from ultra marathoners on the trail, and in all the books they talk about hallucinating while they're out there. So I'm like, is that just a thing? that happens in trail running. Like I can't, I mean, I can't imagine. So that was just sidebar question, nothing to do with recovery. I was just
It is
curious.
fascinating though. So like in college, I was a 1500-meter runner. Way different. Like even
Yeah.
coming out of college, that's what I raced on the track. And so it is a very different culture, different community, different goals. Some people are just out there for the adventure. Some people though are there to like see where their limits are.
Yeah.
And those people, and it's not just like I mean, we're all out there to kind of see where our limits are, right?
Yeah.
But it's not just the like, what can I run a marathon? Can I run a 50K? Can I do this? It's can I barely sleep for 5 days and do trail naps while I'm trying to complete this course? And that's where you get into those states where it gets a little tricky on the mind and the body. So yeah, I totally agree. It's a different community, but and different goals and different ways of challenging ourselves for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in awe. I couldn't, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I want to do that just because think that's maybe the more important one. I don't think I want to do that.
Mhm.
All right. So that was total sidebar question there. But I wanted to highlight something you said that I think is important to this conversation and to the work that you do. It's education and how valuable it is for us to educate ourselves on how to properly take care of ourselves, how to properly nourish ourselves. And I don't just mean through food, but I also mean through movement.
Mhm.
And I'm going to assume things are different where you're at, where I'm at, which is Miami, Florida. It's almost like notorious for fraud with insurance. So to hear you say like your frustration with insurance, I'm like, I'm not surprised because where I come from, there is so much fraud with people putting in claims. There's also fraud with practitioners billing for services that they don't actually do or that they're not doing exactly what they're saying they're doing. So I just wanted to say that I'm sorry you experienced that because as an athlete who's gone to PT and has more often than not had to pay out of pocket because the insurance just would not cover either enough sessions or enough, like it ended up being for me that it was just somehow cheaper to pay out of pocket than to go through insurance. So I just want to say thank you for recognizing that and then doing something about it because I'm not sure if there's a lot of people in Miami that wouldn't be like you. So I just want to say that. But
Oh, and-
I want to go back to the topic of this episode, which is recovery, and begin with the question of in your mind, in your experience, both personally and professionally, what is recovery?
yeah, it's a very complex question, right? It seems very, very simple, because it's very hard to answer that question for me. There's active recovery, there's passive recovery, there's more micro recovery and macro recovery. There's a lot of different ways to answer that. If we're just taking a imaginary runner and talking about them and their life, and how I would program recovery into their protocol and programming, we have recovery daily. We have recovery that starts and movement that starts to enhance recovery directly after their workouts or their runs. We have periodic recovery blocks. Um, and we try to build in a session that's full passive recovery or a day that's full passive recovery, meaning you're doing nothing every single week. And that's even for the people who do go out and do 250-mile races. But so it becomes very difficult because of the detail that goes into recovery. To make it as simple as possible, like it's a time when your body actually makes the gains and adaptation that you're looking for. And when you're out there running, when you're out there doing your workouts, when you're out there doing your strength training, you're doing the activity then that is more catabolic. It's breaking down in certain ways, it's using your energy in certain ways. And during recovery, you're doing the anabolic work. Even when you're doing nothing, your body is refilling your energy stores, it's repairing your tissues when they break down in a good way. I mean, it's also gonna repair if you do something too much, but workouts require you to break down in certain ways so that you can build up stronger, and that stronger happens in recovery. So if you're not doing that right, you're really leaving things on the table when it comes to performance, and you're really setting yourself up for injury, cyclical stuff going on where you keep on kind of running yourself into a wall that you can't seem to get over. And that's usually because of programming difficulties when it comes to recovery. So,
Yeah, so I want, just for clarification purposes, because I've
mhm,
heard of it, but I'm curious what your definition of active recovery
mhm.
is and then passive recovery. I mean, you already said passive is where you're doing nothing, but how would you define active recovery?
Yeah, active is a form of, movement. You're going to be moving. And it's usually either a very short, very easy, very conversational run, or it's some type of low impact activity that helps your body improve its rate of recovery. So increase your what we call vasodilation, or the more blood to the area that we're trying to improve recovery at, reducing inflammatory markers and perception of soreness, things like that. So, for example, if you were choosing an easy run for your recovery, or active recovery, excuse me, then you would aim for, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes where you're going out, maybe with a friend so you can chat the whole time. Or maybe you're just ensuring that you're keeping it at a conversational effort and just enjoying the day and using that light effort to improve the adaptations that you are trying to get to from the exercises that you did before. A lot of times for the athletes that I coach, we use swimming, we use yoga. Some people do light Pilates or light strength on those days. It is a movement-based day to enhance your adaptation to the stronger efforts that are going to reach your goals.
So, an active recovery day is movement, but not necessarily the same movement. So, like for instance, I'm a runner and my active recovery day might look like a 20 to 30-minute conversational pace, which thank you for saying that. Conversation, well, you actually said conversational effort. Thank you for saying that, because I think that is crucial when thinking about running. So for me, an active recovery day would be a day that's either that shorter conversational effort run, or perhaps it's that day where I'm doing strength training, yoga, or something else. Yeah. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, with the caveat that if you are strength training, it's not going to be one of those bigger, heavier lift days.
Okay.
So you're not substituting something that's also making you stiff and sore and pushing you to new levels in your active recovery day. So, because everything should stay at that low level effort. So if you're doing weights, you're only doing maybe 70% of your max if you're doing a squat or something, or you're just doing like a vertical routine that's very common, where you're just going through some motions with your hips, working larger muscle groups, or maybe isolated muscle groups with some band work, but nothing that's like going out to do a 3 rep max on your deadlift, because
Yeah.
that's counter to what our goal is, which is um, very fluid, easy motion that again helps us kind of speed up the recovery process.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, you also said something that I've never heard before: macro and micro recovery. What
Yeah,
is,
it might be.
I mean, it just for you, I mean, because that just
Yeah,
might be like an Asher vocabulary
it
thing
kind of
that
is.
I'm curious about. Because I'm like, wait, what does that mean? Because when I heard you say that, what came up for me was this idea that recovery can be a part of everyday life. And it's not just like, oh, I need to see like Sunday is my rest day. So that's my recovery day, right? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what came up for me, but I'm curious what that meant for you.
Yeah, so it probably is a me thing. I mean, obviously, micro, macro, all those words are not uncommon to, English vocabulary. However, it's probably how I kind of structure my mind. Not probably, it is. So when my coaching philosophy leans heavily on recovery that enhances what we're doing so that we're not getting in an overtrained state or an under-recovered state. And so in my mind, there is a big umbrella for recovery, right? Like when you zoom out and look at the program, there should be large pieces of your whole program that focuses on recovery, either after a big block, if you're doing back-to-back long runs, stuff like that, after a race, after a volume week that you haven't been to before, haven't been to in a while. So there's big chunks of recovery that are easily noticeable throughout your whole program. However, each week also has, like you said, if we're going down in size kind of with recovery, um, now I have to explain my psychology, like my like you will have days, like I mentioned before, like we program at least one day into a routine a week that is dedicated to passive recovery. And then on the daily, there are things that we do to build in recovery so that your body can take advantage of those lower stimulated states, right? Where you're not so in your arousal state, which we get into when we are at a heightened metabolic state. So if you're running or walking fast or whatever you might be doing, stressed out over work.
Yeah.
You're taking advantage of those lower stimulus moments to recover, right? Like even small moments can add up and be cumulative over time. So it might be 15 extra minutes of sleep. It might be a protein shake 30 minutes, 30 to 60 minutes before bed with certain specific grams built in. It might be meditative. It might be something where you're just doing a breathing exercise for a few moments that brings down your central nervous system's response. So you're not at an arousal state, right? Like you're back down at baseline recovery so that your body can continue to be in a restorative process. So yeah, micro dosing kind
Yeah,
of
I love it.
recovery throughout your day to not only help with running and training, but help with life. Like a lot of this is blending things in so you get more enjoyment from what you're doing in all aspects. So my training philosophy really leans into that as well. Like recovery is a process that's important for performance and adaptations, like we've been talking about for the last however long we've been on this call. But it also enhances how much you enjoy your time with your family, how much you can do outside of running in your social circle, how much brain fog you have at work
Mm.
after you did a long run over the weekend. Like it's impactful on so many different levels, and those things also feed into how much motivation you're going to have and how much joy you're going to get from your running and strength training. So I think it's important to look at it more in a more detailed, um, more like in the gray than
Yeah.
just this is a recovery period, this is a training period. They are separate. This is where they
Yeah.
go,
Yeah, I
PCs.
love that. I love that. And I mean, I just wrote it down, right? Where listening to you speak right now, what came up for me was the idea that recovery is a process and it's not just a thing you do. It's not like looking at the calendar and saying, again, like for me, I say Sunday because that's Sunday is
Yeah.
my rest day. That's my day where I don't have to do anything and I'm grateful I don't
Mhm.
have to do anything. But just seeing it as being able to build it in because I think I know, not I think, I know most of us, we're getting our runs done and then we're coming home, immediately showering, and then continuing on with our day. Where
Yeah.
there's like no transition point between the effort of running, like I've had days where it's my cooling down recovery period is driving my kids to school because I'm in a car and like I have to, as opposed to taking the time to, even if it's just 1 minute, like what you're saying, even if it's just 1 minute of maybe you're in the shower and you're taking five deep breaths, right? That micro bit of it makes it sound, it just makes recovery feel more approachable when thinking about it that way, because I know a lot of people struggle with that no days off mentality. No
Yeah.
days off, never miss a Monday, weekend warrior, like all of those. I mean, I'm sure you can contribute, but those are like big ones that, okay, cool, but also as someone who's always wondering how can we bring more people into the sport and to like see how amazing running is,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard when you're seeing that people aren't taking any breaks and that they're just constantly go, go, go. So what are your thoughts on that? Like how do we get people to see recovery as something that does help improve their performance, improve their honestly just general experience with being a human being?
Yeah, and it goes back to education. Um, a lot of times I'll start with a person, and I mean, I can think of someone now. They probably would know who I'm talking about if they were listening to this, but they will just keep it very broad. Um, we're an ultra marathoner, and that mentality is very rampant. Um, especially when I mean, it's at all levels, but it is very prevalent in the community, whatever running distance or terrain you're on. And it took years of like continual like micro exposure to the benefits of it and encouragement and education to get the full like conceptual understanding of how beneficial it is. And because that pull, especially in athletes that are very type A, which running pulls that type of personality often, it's easy to slip into the mindset that you're talking about. So I have to do more, if I'm not doing it, someone else is out there doing it, kind of like this ridiculous, like, um, toxic, like, way of conceptualizing things. So really encouraging people with substantiated evidence, like, okay, you might be seeing people who do multiple 100-mile runs, races, adventure runs, whatever it might be, a year. But in the literature, it shows that even experienced ultramarathoners should only do about 1 to 2 a year at most. Like for your overall health and wellness, this is how much you should program in. This is actually what it looks like, not what it seems like other people are doing. This is what actually we should be aiming at. And so having some substantiated evidence has always been helpful for me. And then just like getting the education out there and getting personal experiences out there too. So kind of like mixing anecdotal with things that they can like point to, like, yes, this has been studied and looked at and is true. Um, because if we all look from the outside like we're just doing everything all the time, it is going to deter that person that wants to come into the running world or is trying to come into the running world and trying to do it all and then thinking they're not a runner or that running always hurts and is terrible. And yeah, of course it always hurts and is terrible. For one thing, it is a hard thing to adapt to. It's not just like going out and kicking a soccer ball a few times a week or even a few times a month. But layer that on with the fact that there is this overarching kind of feeling that you have to do all the time, it makes it almost impossible. And it also makes it where it's painful. So like our musculoskeletal system cannot adapt at that rate. That's why shin splints are so
Mm-hmm.
rampant in the beginner app, like runner. Like once you adapt, like rates fall like way down. But it's because we just do too much too soon because it seems like we should. So I think it just does come back to education, and every single person in the community can kind of help with that by just saying like this is my reality. Yeah, I might be doing a 100 miler, but I'm going to take off the next 3 weeks, or I'm going to like, have this whole week where I'm just going to go and only hike and only like cycle and only do like if we're all more supportive by just
Mhm.
sharing our true experience, I think that would be helpful too. Um, but yeah.
So I get this often with whenever I talk to athletes, it's like, okay, I want to do this and I want to do that. I want to add in the strength training and I want to make sure I'm doing yoga or mobility, or I really love Orange
Mhm.
Theory, or I really love my Peloton classes, or all this. Like they love it all. And
Ah,
the struggle in those cases is that I find the how do I fit it all in and still recover? Like, how do I do all this stuff that I either should be doing because in my case, for instance, my case, it's I'm an aging woman and the body is changing and muscle mass and bone density and all that fun stuff that no one told me back when I was 20 and had more, I think maybe a brain capacity to understand it. Oh, now I'm just tired. But what about those athletes that are like, how do I fit it in? How do I get everything done that I need to do in order to be the best runner, best athlete, and still rest? Like like I feel like that's a common question that I get from people of how do I do the however many days of running and the however many days of strength training and then there's yeah, what do you say to that athlete?
I think the first thing is like you can't be the best if you're not recovering, right? Like there's not how can I do it all and rest? Like rest is part of doing it all. And it actually is pretty high up on the list of priorities of doing it all. Um, More specifically to your question, I end up blocking out a lot of things and kind of linking stuff together to help give more space for recovery. So if a person is, I mean, I do encourage almost everybody, unless they're working with a physical therapist and we're doing something different or whatever it might be, like strength training alone without doing any more volume, without doing any more anything, speed work or anything, will enhance your running, will make you a stronger runner, will make you go faster. Just because of the like mechanical advantages of having strong muscles and supporting
Mhm.
joints and stuff has on running. So almost every person on the team has at least 2 days of running that, or sorry, running, has 2 days of strength that they do in conjunction with running. So that alone has us balancing things. It's not just, running blanket over the week's programming. But oftentimes, like I work with people who are triathletes in different seasons. I work with people who like to do mountaineering and ice climbing and cycling. And so there's a lot of blend that goes on. A lot of those cross-training moments can replace recovery efforts for one thing. So like if we're talking about active recovery, you can still cycle, do it on an active recovery day when you otherwise would be doing a short run. It's low
Mhm.
impact, it's not going to strain your ligaments, tendons, joints, muscles, all those things as much. If you like to hike, have a hiking day on the weekend. We have tons of people who have hiking day on the weekends, and it gets you time on your feet. It continues forward those adaptations and the benefits of active recovery, but it doesn't take away from your running at all.
Mhm.
Um, and then what I was talking about before, I'll circle back to, we kind of link things together as far as strength and preventative care goes, along with running so that you're not taking a lot of time to get dressed again, put on shoes again,
Yeah.
shower again, like do all these things. So what it might look like is on our easy running days, or maybe even on our workout days, we're also ending those sessions with strength. So you're using the easy run to warm up for your strength session, or you're pairing strength for more of an intermediate to advanced runner. You're pairing strength with a workout or a long run so that your harder sessions are 2 times a week and they have days in between them that you can
Yeah.
fully adapt from those harder sessions, and then be ready for the next harder session when it comes around. So it gets a little creative. There's an art to programming as well as a science. And that's why I usually encourage everyone who, financially it's available to work with and team with someone to help with that so that they can kind of have an outsider's view, too, which helps. But usually it's just looking at your schedule, being very honest with yourself over where your time is available, and then maximizing that with entering in the things that you absolutely love and do not want to get rid of as your active recovery days.
Hmm.
Then focusing in on the run days and your intensity days and splitting those or combining those in a way where you can build in recovery. And that's really ambiguous, but I hope that I gave enough examples, or maybe we can clarify to help with
Yeah.
someone
I
else.
mean, I've heard it's right. Like I love what you're saying because it really does highlight the importance of having a team of people that you work with to help make those decisions if you're able to,
Yeah.
just because for some people it does work to do both things on one day that where they do have the schedule flexibility or the time availability to do all of that. And whereas some people it doesn't work
Mm,
to do that. Like there are some days where sure I have time and I can do my run and my strength workout. And then there are some days where it's like, nope, I just have time for I just have time for the run. And it's that question of okay, so then what do you do in the in between? So I guess what I'm trying to say is the importance of meeting the athlete where they're at in terms of how recovery looks like for them and how I'm a big one of my big life mottos is make it make sense and
mhm,
just making sure that what a person is doing does make sense for them and that it's not you're not overdoing it
mhm,
in whatever way that looks like. So I wanted to go back to something that you had said because I've heard it before. And the first time I heard it, it blew my mind. And you said overtrained, under recovered were the two words that you said. And the first time I heard that was basically it was something like you're not overtrained, you're under recovered. And I was just like, what? Wait, like what?
mhm.
Totally blew my mind. So, can you talk to us a little bit more about that? Because I think we definitely fall into the category of having to do more or feeling like we have to do more to achieve our goals or whatever the case is. And
Mhm.
I know I've fallen into that trap of thinking like, oh, I just need to do more strength training, or I need to do more stretching, or I need to do more, or I need to do more. When the
Yeah.
reality is, I would probably just benefit from taking a nap. Um,
Yeah.
so that overtrained, under recovered,
Mhm.
what does that mean for you? And then what does it mean for us lay people just trying to figure out how to do the things we want to do?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it did me too. When I heard those two words, I was like, wait a second. Oh yes, that is good. Yeah, because often it's a mindset shift. Um, it's not I mean, sometimes it is a chronic fatigued state due to overtraining, but oftentimes it's a chronic fatigue state just because we aren't giving ourselves time to relax in between. And I mean, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about just a second ago. Like, it's very individualized. Like, you have to honestly come to the table, like I was talking about before, and see where your opportunities are. Sometimes it's, yeah, you don't have enough time to strength train, so you're going to take 3 exercises. You're going to do those before your run, and they're going to take place of your warm up. And then you're going to take the cool down that you would do for your strength, and you're going to do that for your cool down, for your run. And then that extra time that you've gained, like the 15 minutes that you've gained, you're going to do whatever recovery mode that your body responds well to. So there's not some gold standard of a cool down or recovery that holds true for everybody. Usually it goes back to that thing I was talking about before, like bringing your central nervous system back to its baseline homeostatic state, meaning everything's chill so that your body can go into a restorative state and you can recover. So maybe it's taking 15 minutes to just like lay on the ground. Maybe it's foam rolling because that really gives you time to just breathe and go through the motions. Maybe it's a short yoga session. Maybe it's you get done with the dishes in that 15 minutes so that you can go to bed 15 minutes earlier. Because oftentimes, if you're not building your recovery, you're not starting your recovery journey at, am I eating enough, sleeping enough, and drinking enough water? You're not going to gain much in any other realm of recovery. And so it's almost like you need to go down and, the terrible, like, not terrible. It's actually very beneficial. I just don't prefer it, although I force myself to. The journey of journaling. And and you write down like what your life actually looks like, what time you actually have, and if you are getting those three baseline recovery, if you're hitting those three baseline recovery standards. Am I sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night? Research really shows if you're trying to push yourself in activity, you should get closer to that nine. And how much am I taking in? It doesn't need to be like a detailed diet journal or anything like that, but are you getting enough protein? Are you getting, enough food in during the day? Are you feeling like you're having those mid-afternoon like sleepies? Like, do you need a protein bar then? Do you need just a bar in general to get like 500 or 200 to 500 calories in? And are you drinking enough water? Are you getting in water right after you stop working out so that your body can use that um, to start your recovery process? And then go from there. Okay, I've got those three things down. I'm drinking enough water, I'm eating enough, I'm sleeping enough. Now, where do I have time to play with so that I can take back 15 minutes, even if it's 15 minutes from a run, and build in some recovery so that I accelerate things. Because right now, if you're in a under recovered state, you're not progressing forward. And just adding in that recovery, even if it's taking away from the input that you're getting from fitness, you're going to accelerate your growth. So it's very much a mindset shift. It's very much thinking I'm going to get more from focusing on this aspect of training that seems like I'm doing less than I am being extremely active in a challenging, like gritty way, which we all love to, feel accomplished in our gritty ways, and we should. But if we don't balance that out, it's not going to be fruitful.
Yeah, and I feel like that's just like my brain, the light bulb went off and I was like,
Yeah,
hot take, hot take, hot take. And I wrote it here. Recovery movement doesn't matter if you're not eating, drinking, sleeping enough. Like if you don't have that, then I think of past me where I would go for a run and then I'd come home and have a recovery drink that definitely did not have enough protein in it. Like, and I would go straight to a yoga class because the yoga class was recovery. But it's like I didn't get, I didn't fuel my body. I didn't give it
yeah.
that basic foundation just to feel well. And then I would go, and there was one time in specific that I remember going, doing that, taking a yoga class. It was a
Yeah.
heated yoga class on top of it all. And I left that class and I was like, I burned, our watch. No, it's not accurate, but it just stunned me because I had burned over 300 calories in a yoga class. And I was like, I've never burned that much. What did I do? And it's like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
because I was still activated from my run. I hadn't calmed down. Like I hadn't cooled down. And here I'm going into a heated class. So that to me, just what you said there, and that's why I was smiling the entire time you were talking, because I'm like, yeah, it seems so obvious and it's so basic, and yet that is probably the hardest thing for us
Absolutely.
to wrap our heads around, that the eating, drinking, sleeping, taking care of those things seems like, not to say that it won't, and I'm making an assumption and please correct me, but it seems like that's going to be more effective in helping you see the gains you want versus forcing some other movement on when you haven't given yourself the body, like the time to really just chill out. I don't even know how else to put it.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. Yeah. Yeah, if you don't have that, like not only are you not going to recover and you're going to be under recovered, but you're opening yourself up to so many injury possibilities. Because like we were talking about, like m movement at the level that we're doing it is intentionally catabolic. It's how we like if catabolic meaning breaking things down,
Yeah.
um, getting micro tears in the muscles, for example, when you're doing strength. It's needed because as that muscle heals, it gets larger and stronger and can do more. Um, but if we don't have the basic building blocks to do that, if we're not giving it like sleep alone, like the only time that HGH is released into natural human growth hormone is released into our system and then uses protein to build all this stuff back up is when we're in deep sleep, right? Like we have to get into our REM cycles. If we're not giving our body the quality or quantity that it needs, those cycles are disrupted. They're not, you don't go through enough of them at night and you slow that recovery process. So, yeah, like, and most people do because it's our culture, need just to focus on those three things. And
Yeah.
even myself, like, I just like get on my phone, even like reading books. I'm like, why have I read 14 extra chapters? Go to bed. Um, but, but yeah, it is vitally important. And I think that once people just give themselves like maybe even 10 days to just try to knock those three things out, they can see the benefits in their cognitive ability and their mood, outside of running. I mean, outside of strength. Like they'll see changes in themselves and just an overall feeling of well-being will be heightened, that they'll notice and appreciate the gains and hopefully be able to continue some of them at least forward in a more consistent way.
Yeah, and I'll give myself here as a personal example simply because you mentioned something earlier that was very reminiscent of my experience where I had been uh last year I trained for Chicago and that was one of the hardest training cycles I've ever had. Just so challenging. Um I was exhausted, fatigue, all the time, all the time. And I thought I was doing what I needed to do to be able
Mm,
to handle training. And I started working with a dietitian and I
mm,
realized, oh, I am not eating enough. And I am definitely not getting enough protein, which for me is extra challenging as a vegetarian. And I thought I was okay, right? I was like, oh, like I'm so on top of it. I'm so in tune with my body. And then I spent
yeah.
many months being very angry with my body because it couldn't do the things I wanted it to do. And I just couldn't understand like why.
Yeah.
And worked with the dietitian, started to eat more, added in more protein, more snacks, more everything.
Mm,
And I will say it was pretty miraculous,
mm,
the turnaround in
yeah.
terms of I'm still climbing myself out of that,
Yeah.
but at least I am no longer dreading my
Mm,
runs because I was going into them so exhausted.
mhm.
And that was that was because I was not paying enough attention to my nutritional recovery
Yeah.
in order to feel like I was thriving. Like I really spent much of that training block. And there were other issues too, other health issues, but the nutritional piece really
Mm,
was like such a such a game changer for me.
yeah.
But it's funny because hearing you speak, I didn't really think of that as recovery, right? Like I just thought of it like I need to feed myself better. Whereas listening to you speak, there's an invitation for us to truly get more expansive with how we define recovery and
Yeah.
seeing recovery as, I mean, I'm personally going to walk away from this conversation with embracing the idea that recovery is more than just movement or the ceasement of
Mhm.
movement. I don't even know if that's a word, but
Yeah.
right, like I would think of recovery as again, and I would hear active recovery, passive recovery, complete rest days, like those things. But again, you're inviting us to see how we're fueling ourselves, how we're hydrating ourselves, and how our relationship is to sleep as
Yeah.
things that are also part of recovery, which then make the active recovery bits,
Mhm.
I would think, and I would say in my experience, just more enjoyable. Like there's more, I guess we're more resourced to be able to do the hard thing that we want to do, right?
Yeah. It feels like these three things almost give you, you're playing like video games or something and you are doing the car driving video games and stuff and you get boosters along the way that you can use at your discretion.
Yeah.
These things are giving you boosters. Like the engine's already there. Like the ability to go is already there. But if you don't have the booster to push yourself on to like peak when you want to peak and do these great adventures when you want to, like it's not going to come to fruition. And although recovery is very complex in some ways, like it's low-hanging fruit in others. Um, Bringing a snack with you during the day, bringing a water bottle with you during the day, trying to get 5, 10, 15 minutes more sleep a night. That is a little bit more difficult for people I know, but like there are some things that you can integrate and start to integrate in your life that are quite easy to do. You're not having to add another 20 miler. You're just having to start your day with a glass of water and then drink your coffee. And try to break the fast before 10 o'clock. Like you're just bumping up that nutritional intake. So there are easy ways to do it, and it's just going to give you those boosters in your training, those boosters in your performance, and safeguard you against injury in ways that you just can't get from extra foam rolling or hot yoga.
Oh yeah. Listen, as I'm listening to you talk, right, I'm thinking of all of us who sit in a car line to pick up our children.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that would be a great opportunity to get to do on Calm or whatever meditation device like or app or whatever. That's probably more beneficial than doom scrolling on the phone or checking emails or whatever the case is. So again, it's to me, there's a few things that I will walk away from this conversation with. And I really love the idea of just microdosing recovery. I think that's fantastic because it's creating opportunity wherever and whenever versus thinking, oh, I can only do recovery after my run, or I can only do it, or recovery only looks like this. So there's that invitation to check in with yourself. It seems to me where it's like, okay, how else can I check in with myself and kind of going with that the car analogy, right? Like where can I put some time in to just do a system check of like how is everything feeling and am I feeling, which I think this is probably a really hard question for a lot of people to answer, right? Of like, am I feeling recovered enough to do that workout later or to do that workout tomorrow? Or even what can I do if you are, let's say, for instance, you're marathoner, right? Marathoner, peak week of training. There's so much going on. There's that question of like, what can I do to add in recovery and wherever I can add it. So once that 20 miler comes up, I'm feeling ready to do it,
Mhm.
which almost feels like it goes counter to a lot of what we hear of, my gosh, what's that concept called? It's the fatigue. Oh my gosh. Cumulative fatigue. That's what
Oh,
I'm
cumulative,
thinking of.
yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's like you like again, it's like there's almost this culture of if you're not tired, are you even doing the work that you're doing?
Yeah. And it's also like, speaking of the checking in with yourself thing, it's not just like, do I feel recovered? Because sometimes, like, old me, I think, would ask myself that, and I'd be like, well, are my legs sore? Do I have like some stiffness? Like, I wouldn't go into the like, do I feel motivated to do an easy run? Like,
Hmm.
do I want to go out with friends? Is my brain sloggy at work? Do I have GI complications that I usually don't have? Like, there's so many different things that point to an under recovered state, that we normally wouldn't like think about. Like, if I laid down to go to sleep 15 minutes early, could I even go to sleep? Like, because those sleep disturbances, would I still wake up in the middle of the night? Like, those can point, especially if you have quite a few of them adding up. So it's not just physical. You have to look at like how your mental, and emotional state is too. Because if you're constantly aroused, like we talked about before, where your system is very stimulated, even if you are looking at your phone while you're in the car line and you're getting a lot of input that is increasing your cortisol levels because it's a stress hormone, you're not bringing yourself down to a recovery state. So even if you are having those moments where you're continually stressed and that is showing up in a myriad of different ways that aren't physical, like, you need to take that into consideration too. So look at your concentration, look at your motivation, look at how often you get sick. Like,
Hmm.
immune system, depression is a big thing. Um, if you're a woman, obviously look to see of irregularity in period. Like, but general fatigue is as important as any like one muscle. Like, are you mentally fatigued as much as are you physically fatigued? So a lot of
That
things that
is,
you need to check in with yourself.
yeah, and I just that makes me happy to hear because I always say that such a big component of running is the mental side of it. So even checking in with yourself of and I'm smiling because I'm thinking back to myself last summer where it's I was not I would say that I was not motivated to run, but I was so committed to running that I would do the runs. And after I did the runs,
Everyone
it
has
felt
those
great.
days. Yeah, everyone
Yeah.
has those days. It's that, do they
It's at
continue?
the string of it, right? So
Yeah.
like again, hearing you talk, I was like, no, I feel like I spent like good chunks of that block not being motivated at all
Yeah.
because there was this under recovered state that I was in
Mm.
on top of being so stressed out that I couldn't figure out why I was so tired and stressed out. So it's just
Yeah.
it all just layers, right? Like it all there's so much to it that it's not just I just want to thank you for pointing that out that it's not just as simple as hey, checking how is my body feeling. It's also just how's my mind feeling? Am I excited to run? Am I excited to continue training? I may be scared of the workout, but am I excited to give it a try? Am I right?
Yeah.
Like those are such great questions to ask that help you check in because listen, I'm probably like everybody else that when I am well rested and I've had enough sleep, I feel like I can do a lot. And
Yeah.
when I don't, then I'm often cranky and very short tempered and just not maybe not the nicest person to be around. So that all just makes so much sense. So I'm gonna go back and I'm just gonna ask like four more questions for you. Four questions.
Okay.
So title of the episode is Recovery is for Wimps.
Mhm.
Is recovery for wimps?
Of course not. Recovery is honestly like what very wise, smart people, individuals, runners, all walks of life integrate into their life intentionally.
Oh, that was
Not
so
for what.
that was so good. Okay. Oh my gosh, that was fabulous. All right. Second question is, because we are nearing the end of this episode, can you tell us where can we find you? How else can we connect with you? Just
Yeah.
give us all the websites, the socials, all of it.
Yes, I actually have a few spots open on the team right now. I provide run coaching, run and strength coaching, and injury prevention work. So if you want to see if we could be compatible, you can go to dasherpr.com. You can email me directly at dasherprteam@gmail.com, or I'm on the internet. I'm on the interwebs. I'm on Instagram at Dr. Asher Runs.
That's
So yeah.
awesome.
Love to hear from
Awesome.
you.
Yes. Okay. Question number three here is,
Mhm.
what do you have coming up this year, running or not, that you are excited about?
Very excited right now. I am currently planning on doing so my mom, who I mentioned before, is a big runner, and we usually plan one event a year where we do some like wilds, like life adventure. So last year we hiked rim to rim at the Grand Canyon, and this year we're going to do the Grand Teton. Teton. I was like, is it Teton? Is it Teton?
I
What
have
is it?
no clue.
Grand Teton Loop, which is 35 miles around the park. And so we're just now planning that, which is exciting. I also got roped into one of the Disney half marathons with my friends, which is totally like this is a completely different year than I'm used to, because I'm used to being like, I don't know, have my vest on and going to do a 50K. But this time they're like, which tutu should we wear? And I'm like, oh no. I don't know if I am. I'm like a eat snacks in the woods kind of girl. I don't
Yeah.
know if I'm a tutu on the roads kind of girl.
Which event are you
So
doing?
Wine and Dine.
Okay,
It's
yeah, that's a good
in
one.
October or something. I haven't even been to the park, so it should be exciting.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the Disney races they are an experience, and I'm sure they will be very, very different than the trail races. But I will say Disney knows how to put on an event, so you
yeah.
should be in good hands. The only thing with Disney events is, which may or may not be a problem for you, is they start ridiculously early.
All that.
And
It's okay.
hopefully, hopefully our Floridian weather
Yeah.
will be nice for you that weekend. So,
Yeah. I'm
um,
used to the like 4 a.m. starts and stuff and 6
yeah,
a.m. starts.
yeah,
So
that's why I'm like,
it's
that's honestly the hardest part. So if you can do
yeah.
that, you're solid. All right. Final question for you is, what are your final words for us?
I read the other day when I was kind of prepping for this call, someone say that, sorry, my dog is in the background. Someone say that rest is not a four-letter word, and I hope that people listening to this will embrace rest and recovery a little bit more, even if they do it in small bouts. It doesn't need to be something that is a hurdle in your life. And it's something that you get way more out of than what you put in. So if you can just put in a few minutes a day, rework a few things to gain back 5, 10, 15 minutes and use that time intentionally, you're going to see incredible benefits from that, both on the injury prevention side and the performance side, and just being able to enjoy your life more. So I'd really encourage you to try it again, look at it again. If you've had difficulty in the past, just if you can rest correctly, if you can rest right, then you can run better. And it's when you have that mind shift, it makes huge impacts.
Thank you for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you for that. And thank you for being with me today,
Yeah,
everyone.
of
We'll see you
course.
next time.
Thank you. See
Bye.
you. Bye.